Good afternoon, everybody. Now, I just realized when I was having my previous class, I had a class just now between 16 and I guess 16:50 here that we we tentatively had said we'd have a class, today, but I never got the confirmation because I think in our previous interaction I'd mentioned that I would wait for confirmation from you, unless if I missed that confirmation, I would wait for confirmation for you to signal that Sunday or Saturday would be ideal. But I just assumed Sunday anyway. So that's that. And then I mean, a bit of an issue here, and a bit of a problem. It turns out that on for next week, I am not going to be I'm not going to be available. I'm yet to confirm here. There's this exercise. I don't know how many of you know that. With introduction of A levels and all those things, the curriculum is being worked on or something. So I was invited by the ministry to participate in an exercise which begins next week. Actually, it's supposed to have started on 23rd, but the computer science curriculum will only start. It's going to be worked on beginning Tuesday itself. Now, what I wanted to suggest is that I can plan to have, because we have our interactions during what will probably be lunchtime. I can tentatively plan for us to have a 13 to 14 hour interaction on Tuesday. So we'll tentatively have the class, but it will be 13 to 15 if we have class. However, and we can confirm this maybe on Tuesday itself. However, the other 1 hour, I want to suggest that we have an interaction on Wednesday, and I was going to maybe ask for you to check. I don't have the timetable here, but I know I have the timetable here, but you never know, right? I want to suggest that we have our class. I don't know if there's a class. I wanted us to steal time from anywhere between 17 to 19 or something. So probably on Wednesday or something. That's one option here, right? And I see, okay, you have MSP 5102, I suppose. An option, if you are agreeable on this, you can discuss and let me know later on. An option would be, so if we have a 1 hour interaction on Tuesday between 13 and 14, we can then have another 1 hour slot after 5102, if that's fine with you, on Wednesday, right? So that would be between 18 and 19 hours. Okay, that's one option. The other option, I'm trying to avoid this weekend thing here. The other option would be an early morning class if you're agreeable, right? Because I know this exercise will typically be starting maybe around 8 or something. So we can maybe have a 7 to 8 class or something. I don't know if that's doable. Anyway, so something to think about here. I would appreciate it if you get back to me. Especially, I think the Wednesday one would work. I know it would be a bit too much for you because you'd literally have class for about 3 hours continuously. So if this is possible, that would be good. Unless if we can. And again, I wanted to check the 13-hour slot, but I see that there's a class. You have classes, except for Monday though, which is tomorrow. Yeah, but I'll be traveling tomorrow. Anyway, something to think about. Anyways, there we go. If it doesn't work out, we'll find time how we'll figure out exactly how to we can reclaim lost time or something. But at the bare minimum, we will have a 1 hour slot only on Tuesday. I imagine, unless if I can run away from that session or something like that. All right. Anyway, on with it. I am not sure if you have had a chance to think about the interactions that we've had so far, specifically as they relate to our discussion, right? Our discussion of types of computer. We're looking at the information technology layer. That's what we're discussing, and I think last time we met, we found ourselves looking at server computer systems, right? We provided motivation for why servers are important, what role they play, especially as they relate to what we introduced as as the motivating factors for why you'd need a server, right? High load, for instance. Things like, and I don't know if I have the correct thing here even. There we go. High workload, right? Availability and things of that sort. And we got to a stage where I think we realized that things have somewhat changed, right? So the traditional way of deploying an application like a social protection management information system would involve one purchasing their own server computer systems. So much like you go to buy your computer, your laptop, or your phone, you do the same thing for a server. Okay? Now, servers are expensive, right? I mean, obviously it's a good investment, especially if you're setting up a platform like ZSpace, for instance. But it turns out that there are other important things that you ought to take into account, right? Before you decide on whether you're going to buy your own server and set it up on your premises. It's things like, do you have the skilled manpower, okay, for you to manage the server infrastructure, not just the server infrastructure really, but also the environment within which these servers are going to be installed or set up. Okay, it's also things to do with the fact that these computers that we use have a lifespan. If you buy a computer today, right, there's no guarantee that it's still going to be okay 2 years from now or something, right? It may outlive its usefulness here by the time you get to the second year or something. So upgrading means additional money. And upgrading means you'd have to figure out how to get rid of your current server infrastructure, for instance, right? So these are things to take into account. And if you decide to take advantage of cloud computing, you realize that you're able to get around a lot of these things, because we mentioned that with cloud computing, you can scale and you can request for resources on demand. Okay, as long as you have the money, really. Very, very flexible. You don't have to worry about, the software on the server needs to be upgraded because there's this security threat that has been identified. Nope. The cloud service provider is going to handle all those things. Okay. Anyway, so it turns out, if there are no questions, it turns out that insofar as cloud computing is concerned, there are a variety of so-called cloud computing subscription models. And these are the ones that I would want us to discuss. Much like if we use our analogy of renting, right? Much like renting. You can rent a house, yes, In some instances, there are people that will rent just a house. There are people that will prefer to rent a furnished house, or they call them furnished apartments. I guess it sounds fancy in Lusaka or something. Or you can rent a room, right? In fact, it gets even better. In a place like Lusaka, especially with students, undergraduate students for the most part, you can rent a bed space. So, in other words, what we're saying is, I mean, cloud computing is much like, the example I'm just providing, where we are renting accommodation, if you will. You can go for a variety of cloud offerings, as they are called, okay, or subscription models. So we're going to go through these in sequence. There are 3 of them. There's what's called, software as a service, what's called software as a service, platform as a service, and infrastructure as a service. And as we are talking about this, really, I want to argue that maybe software as a service would be similar to renting a room or something like that, I guess, to a certain extent. Or maybe software as a service would be renting a fully furnished apartment. And then platform as a service would be like platform as a service and infrastructure as a service would be like renting the whole house or something. But I'll explain this and it will make sense just now. Right, so 3 different subscription models. Okay, with software as a service, what you're doing as a company that is interested in subscribing to a cloud offering is you're really paying for access to a piece of software. So if we use this piece as an example, right? If we wanted to gain access to this piece using a software as a service subscription model, the cloud service provider, whoever they are, will install a this piece on our behalf on servers that they own, and then tell us to say, for you to access this piece, here is the URL you're using, and here are the credentials you're going to be using. So every time there's a problem with this piece, you no longer call your IT, but you call the cloud service provider, the ones that are providing this piece as a software as a service. This is why it's called software as a service. So what you're getting access to is the software itself, right? And indirectly, you're getting access to the infrastructure where this software is installed. And you don't really care where the servers are, right? If you stop and think, you realize that there are a number of software as a service applications that we use. I want to start by reminding us that Google Meet is a software as a service platform. Why? None of us download Google Meet to install it on our computer to use it, is it? You just go to a URL, you type in the URL meet.google.com, and then boom, you start accessing Google Meet. Now I know what you're thinking. Well, but Lighton, I'm not subscribing to Google Meet. Well, you're using the free tier, is it? Which is why you don't have access to premium services. Like you cannot record meetings. Those of you that have used the free tier for the free tier that's associated with Google Meet here, like if you're using your Gmail account, will agree with me that I think they time the meetings, so you automatically cut off after a certain period of time. I don't know if it's 1 hour or something. Could be wrong here. Okay. If you want to gain access to those premium services, you pay a subscription fee. You pay more money. What other classic example do we have? Well, storage space. Okay. If you have a Gmail account, you will agree with me that one of the things that acts as a restriction is you are only limited to, because when you have a Gmail account, implicitly you have access to G Drive and all those things, right? You are restricted to 15 GB of space. I don't know if you know this. 15 15 GB of space. If you want more space, like yours truly, right? I've been using this account for many years myself, and as a result, I prefer to archive my emails myself, right? I have gotten to a stage where and I upload a lot of things in my Google Drive, because I don't want to lose those things. I want to preserve them. I have had to subscribe, right? I believe I subscribed. Yeah, it's telling me current plan. I subscribed to this 200 GB plan. Okay, this is a software as a service. So what Google in this case is doing is they are providing me with a piece of software, right? Google Drive, which enables me to store files. Okay, and I pay this amount here every year. I was chatting to a colleague. They shall remain nameless here. Not that there's anything bad in what happened. They call me. Dr. Piri, can you please help me here? I'm trying to. I want to send an email, but I can't. And in fact, I've stopped receiving emails because I've run out of space in my personal. I've run out of space, right? My Gmail account. And it's like, are you using a UNZA assigned email address or your personal one? So it's a personal one. Okay, so we go there and we started doing the usual things that hopefully you guys have done, right? Because I imagine you've run out of space at some point. You start deleting things so that you reclaim space, and I remember mentioning to them, say, well, this is not sustainable, is it? What you want to do is you want to pay a little bit extra and go for one of their paid for premium features or plans, if you will. And I gave them an example to say the 200 GB, I remember previously I was using the 100 GB one, I guess. I don't know if it's still there. But I remember telling them to say, I only pay $29 per year, right? So $29 per year. And I remember also telling them to say, well, 29.99 is less than 1,000 kwacha. If you think about it, right? It's 784 kwacha, by the way, 25 ingwe, using the current thing. I just checked it on my phone here. There's an app. And my argument was, you probably spend a lot more on talk time and data per month than you would be paying for this plan, right? But anyway, long story short is this is a software as a service. There is more, okay? The emails that we enjoy. Oh, I use Gmail and all that. Well, Gmail is a software as a service platform. What Alphabet or what Google is doing is they're saying, you can use this software. You don't have to, scratch your head and say, I'm going to download, an email, or I'm going to set up my own email server so that I start sending emails. I just tell you, sign up. Here's the software, right? You just go to mail.google.com. So quite a number of things here that are provided as software as a service. What else? Facebook is a software as a service, right? Just access it right there and then. So the idea behind software as a service, cloud offering, is you're actually gaining access to the software. And more on that just now. There's also platform as a service, right? Where what you have access to is the execution environment, right? Maybe the operating system and the databases. Remember when we were saying, when we were giving an overview of how ZSpace works, we made mention of the fact that, well, for ZSpace to work, there must be a web server, and because it's a web application, obviously, and would need to make sure that there's a database available, right? We install a database and all those things. Well, all of those things collectively will form what's called a platform together with operating system, right? What you can do is, if you want to have control over, or if you have a custom piece of software like ZSpace, there are some software tools that are generic, right? Or that can be generalized somehow. But there are some applications that are specific to an organization, like ZSpace. I don't think there's any other organizations, maybe not-for-profit organizations, that would want to use a piece of software similar to ZSpace that we can then customize. So what do you do? Well, you go to the cloud service provider and you say, I just need the execution environment, the platform. So just make sure that you provide me with an operating system, a server that will have an operating system installed and all the software components that I use, so that I will then have access to that environment, that platform, and then I will install my ZSpace. And then finally, right, what you can do is you can go for the infrastructure. It's bare bones, right? So you just go there and you say, I want you to provide me with an infrastructure. It's like the house which is not finished. Just give me a house. I want to rent your house. That's all. I will buy my own refrigerator, my furniture. In fact, the platform as a service could be something like, I want a house, but I want that house to have a cooker and there should be a fridge there, right? A cooker and a fridge is a necessities or something. The rest I will provide on my own. I'll buy my own bed and all those things. With infrastructure as a service, it's similar to, I just want the house, an empty house. The things that I need in that house, I will buy alone, right? So what you're doing with infrastructure as a service is you're going to this cloud service provider and you're telling them to say, I would like you to provide me with the infrastructure, the computer system itself, the server infrastructure. What they'll typically do is just say, for you to gain access to this infrastructure, this is the IP address. And then what you start doing is you go in there and you install your own operating system, right? You start installing your own database management systems, your web servers, okay? Anyways, so that's that. A bit more here, right? To try and maybe make us understand as to what software as a service is all about, is we see that, as we had mentioned, you are gaining access to the software that you'd want to use to do your day-to-day activities. Okay? And so what you have access to is a complete and fully functional application like Gmail. All you do is, as long as you have internet access, you just type in the address and boom, your software works. Now, in case you're wondering about, oh, but what about security and all those things? Well, you have control over the security, right? It's like your Gmail account. Sure, you're using a piece of software that is provided by Google, quite all right. But what Google does is it enables you to create your own username and password, right? You have your own credentials that ensure that the data, right, that you're accumulating by way of using Google or Gmail is somewhat secure or something. I mean, there's an element of trust, obviously, right? It's like I'll give you an example, right? This application is being managed by somebody else. They're the ones that are backing up your information. They're obviously questionable issues associated with the security of the data itself, if that makes sense. But more on that, I think we talk about pros and cons of these things here. So you have access to a fully functional piece of software. And the software itself, right? Everything from backups, end user support. If some of your users, let's say this piece was being provided as a software as a service and people in, let's say, Eastern Province don't have access to this piece, what you would do as a company, as a ministry, is you call the service provider, the company that is providing that this piece of software as a service, and you tell them, well, our users are not able to access the software. So part of their job, or part of what you are paying for there, is the support, right, that will be providing to troubleshoot things. Okay? Also, issues to do with maintenance. Remember, when you're using a piece of software, like Chrome, for instance, right? I don't know how many of you know this, but you know, with Windows operating system, occasionally you have that notification that says, well, there's a new version of Chrome available. Click here to upgrade or something. Or on our phones, we do this a lot. I was just upgrading Gemini on my phone, right? And I couldn't use it. It blocked me out. I had to upgrade or something. Upgrading is a tedious task, right? It's a lot more complicated than people think here, right? But when you go for a software as a service cloud offering, you do not have to worry about the upgrade. So you don't need to, if you're IT, you don't have to worry about, oh, how are we going to make sure that the downtime, the amount of time that people won't have access to this piece is reduced. That is pushed over to the cloud service provider. Right? So they'll tell you, oh, we're going to do an upgrade. It will take about an hour, so the system will not be available. And you just sit and wait. They do their magic, and then you gain access to that. So the issue of maintenance of the application itself is handled by the cloud service provider. I hope this is making sense here, right? So in terms of our specific example for social protection management information system, you would be paying money to gain access to just this. In other words, you'll be paying money to whoever is providing this service to say, just give us a URL. It's going to be maybe this piece. And usually these cloud offerings, software as a service applications, are done in such a way that you have a generic URL, right? So it should be like, I'll call this just Zam Cloud. Let's say it's cloud or Zam Cloud or something. Dot, I guess it would be an ISP, but dot co.zm or something. So I'm trying to check the IP address here, Ministry of Community. I'm trying to check the acronym here. So it's MCDSS. So you'd go to this cloud service provider, and what they'll do is they'll say, well, for you to access a software as a service, this piece, you can access it by going to mcdss.zamcloud.co.zm. This is how you log in, and then you have access to your application. If you want, you can do fancy things, and the software as a service is being rerouted, right, to a URL of choice. And we're not really looking at those gory technical details here, but you'd still have your this piece being linked to Ministry of Community Development and Social Services .gov.zm, but really it would be pointing to the application that is being provided by ZamCloud in this particular case. But what's important here is to appreciate that what you're paying for is the software. Okay? I hope it's making sense. I'm trying as much as possible to provide us with specific examples, right? There's an endless list of examples where people will be accessing software as a service. I'm trying to think if Zambia has any such thing here, like an entity that provides generic services, right? Managed software, sometimes it's called or something. I can't think of any, but I wouldn't be surprised if I don't know if the likes of Dove Computing, for instance, do this, because functions like payroll and stuff, Dove Computing, payroll related issues. These are generic things, right? So what makes sense here? Sign in. What makes sense here is a company like Dove Computing would provide these payroll services, and all the different companies that would pay subscription fee here would have their own dedicated URL. Oh yeah, you need a Dove Computing account here. Yeah, I don't know about this here, but anyway, that makes sense. All right. Now, software as a service, right? If you think about it, if you stop and think about it, there are pros and cons for this, right? We start with advantages of renting or paying for a software. The obvious ones, and some of these are really applicable to all the different cloud offerings, right? Software as a service, platform as a service, and infrastructure as a service also. But there's reduced hardware costs. Because what you're doing is you're paying this organization to say, give me access to this application. You don't have to worry about the hardware. Hardware upgrades, we need a new server. You will not have those conversations, because all you are doing is paying to have access to the software. What else? reduced software costs, and this is from the perspective of maintenance, by the way. You will not have to worry about software upgrades because all of those things will be tied to your service level agreement with the organization. And this brings us to the advantage from the software perspective, right? Sure, there are reduced software costs, but also the upgrades are automated somehow, right? They're automated. From your point of view, there's nothing like, whoa, our IT department needs to plan, because upgrading software needs to be properly planned for, right? There's a downtime, and they'll even send out communication. During this period, this software will not be available because IT is going to be upgrading or something. If you are going for a software as a service, that maintenance task is masked out. You won't see it actually. It's done on your behalf, so it's like automated or something. The other advantage is tied to data loss, and we discussed data loss in module number 7. But the advantage that is there is that because you are renting the software, everything, all of the recovery-centric operations are handled by the cloud service provider. So they'll be doing backups on your behalf. In the event that something wrong happens, they will probably have backed up your data, and all they will do is restore the backup rather. So you have seamless protection from data loss. And then of course there's the flexibility in the end user support, right? Because the support provided, if there's something wrong with the application, is typically enshrined in your MOU or service level agreement, right, with the cloud service provider. So within there, they will give you details like, well, here's a toll-free number that you have to call for anything urgent. We are available 24/7. That's the flexibility part. Or here's a support email. If you are calling between 07 to 17 hours Zambia time, this is the number you call. This is the email. If you are calling between, I don't know if it's 18 to perhaps midnight or something, here's the number or something. Support, flexible user support here. Granted, in some instances, this support may be a bit difficult because the people providing this support may not be co-located with you. It's different from if you have an IT department that is responsible for this. So physically be available to troubleshoot things, right? Believe it or not, there are certain things that are difficult to convey via phone. But there are workarounds, right? These days there's technologies. I don't know if your IT department has done this, but there's what they call remote desktop connections, right? Where somebody will just tell you, I'm going to attempt to connect to your computer. Can you just grant me access to your computer or something? So in this particular case, if there's something wrong that you're experiencing, somebody will say, well, I want to experience what you're experiencing. So I want to remote access to your computer, and then I'll try and access the application so that you're troubleshooting. But either way, right, there's flexibility in the end user support. And of course, you don't have to worry about hardware maintenance or software maintenance. Typically, the cost here is obviously slightly more because you're also paying for the support, right, and the maintenance. Nothing is perfect in terms of the disadvantages of a software as a service platform. And again, some of these disadvantages cut across for all the 3 cloud service offerings here. But the unfortunate thing about software as a service platforms is, in fact, cloud services is that there's a dependency on internet connectivity, especially in instances where the cloud service provider is located, on the other side of the world or something. If I don't have internet access, right, I'm foolishly backing up, using the word foolish here in a respectful manner here. But let's say I decide, well, I'm going to be using Google Drive as a way to back up my data, right? I back up information in Google Drive. Well, good luck to you when you are faced with a situation where there is no internet access. How are you going to back up this data, right? You can't. The same goes for an application like Zispis. Imagine Zispis was being offered as a software as a service offering by, let's say, Amazon Web Services or something. If you don't have access in the ministry, nobody will work, right? Because there's no way you gain access to that application. If on the other hand, if that service is hosted on the ministry's servers, you still have access to that application, because usually when there's no internet access, you'd still have access to the intranet. So you can still share files, you can still communicate with people on the intranet, right? You can still work, in other words. So that's a huge disadvantage here. The fact that there's a dependence on reliable internet connectivity. In some instances, you may have internet connectivity, but if the internet connection is slow, then people will find it hard to work. The system is down. Or rather, the system is slow or something. There could be concerns associated with data protection, especially for sensitive applications, right? Think about Zispis. Remember how we said an application like Zispis allows you to send money to beneficiaries, right? If you have no control over where this application is being hosted and what is going on when people are upgrading, there's no guarantee that people will do things that are a bit untoward here, right? It may not be the organization. The organization may genuinely be interested in doing the right thing, but maybe the people that are employed, right, by that cloud service provider. Yeah, so there are concerns to do with data protection, because you have no control over the data being generated by this application. It's like right now, right? I keep saying, well, I'm uploading my data on Gmail, and it's a lot of data, by the way, right? In my case, all projects that I do, right? Even details to do with like projects that involve grants, for instance, they're all here. If you look at my emails, there's some information that is sensitive, obviously. I just, I take it by faith that Google, right, which is providing this service, is really not going to steal my information, right? They'll have my interest, they'll take my interest into account and make sure that the right things are being done. But there's no guarantee, right? And we've heard about scandals about, these companies, organizations selling data, right? To other, because selling user data has become a big business here. I take it by faith that Google is not selling sensitive information that I communicate with other people with, right? Because I have control over this application, there's nothing stopping them from just reading my messages, right? Although using automated means here. So there are those data protection concerns that you have to take into account. The other thing here is there could be like vendor lock-in concerns, is it? You have this dependency on Gmail, right? Like in my case, I pay $29.99 every year. I'm locked in here, right? I'm locked in because all of my data is in the cloud. It's a lot of data, actually, by the way. If I showcase, if I open my Google One account, you will notice that I'm using close to 100 plus GB of data. It's 109. Now, if Google all of a sudden, and this happens often, is it? Tomorrow or a month from now, they say, well, we are increasing our 200 GB plan from $29.99 to $69.99. I'm locked in, right? Because I'm locked in, I have such a strong dependency on Google One here. It becomes difficult for me to even think of migrating. So I have to scramble and try and look for the additional money, right? Which is like more than 100% here. I don't know. There could be issues with compliance, and this is a big one, right? You are using a software as a service, and then all of a sudden, the Republic of Zambia comes up with an act, right? Legislation that says You cannot store data with personal identifying information outside the boundaries of Zambia. That's a compliance issue, right? And I think if you think about the different sort of social protection management information systems, you notice that compliance is one of those things that will probably prevent you from going for maybe a software as a service offering. You have no control over the data, right? And then also the issue of data ownership. Unlike a situation where you have on-premise servers, you have control over the data. You know exactly. So the server that is used to archive the data is located in that building. You know, right, that you have control over the data. With this, right, I don't have control over this data, is it? In fact, in all likelihood, for most software as a service, there are certain things that are going to be in that end user agreement that you agree to, right? To say the company offering this service is allowed to do this and that insofar as your data is concerned, right? So there are questionable issues to do with data ownership here. And then really, if you look at it from their immediate financial advantages associated with a software as a service platform, but in the long run, in the long term, you begin to realize that it becomes costly for you to do this, right? In the long run, but you'd have to do a projection or something. There's also limited application customization. Customization here implies what the people in the ministry did to this piece. Remember, I said this is based on core MIS. What they've done is they've made extensive changes to this application so that it really looks like it's something that is associated with the ministry. The colors, the programs, in fact, even the fields, right? The beneficiary fields. There are certain fields that may not be applicable to Malawi or Nigeria or something, but they're just specific to Zambia. All of those have been integrated within this piece because the ministry has control over how the software can be customized. With a software as a service offering, it becomes difficult for you to customize the application. And I want to give you an example, right, of UNZA. If I access my UNZA email, this is my UNZA mail. If you notice here, top right, if you notice, there's a UNZA logo here. Right? This is Gmail, but there's a UNZA logo here. UNZA emails are hosted by Google. Okay, you notice here my where is that? Okay, it doesn't show my email account here, but it's showing me here that it's managed by UNZA. Oh, it's right here on top, right? lighton.pir@unza.zm. What you notice here, right, is that if you look at the interface right now, what you notice is that this interface, it's almost exactly the same as my personal email. This is lighton.pir@gmail.com. The only customization that you're seeing here, if you pay attention, is there's just an UNZA logo here. Everything else is the same, right? There are limitations in terms of what you can do to this application. Why? When you're providing an application as a software as a service, like the way Google is doing here, it's going to be used by a lot of entities. And because it's used by a lot of entities, there's a limit as to what you can do by way of customization. Okay? So there's the issue of customization there. I was going to suggest that we proceed and talk about platform as a service. We could actually. But I wanted to pause here and just ask if maybe people have any specific questions about software as a service offering. And really you want to think about this discussion relative to a typical social protection management information system. It doesn't have to be this piece. It could be like the application you use to manage the JAWS project that a lot of you mentioned when we're introducing ourselves, right? Or really any other hypothetical social protection management information system that you can think of. There were some of you that were talking about, I can't remember who, but they were mentioning that there's an NGO that they've co-founded. If you're planning to manage data that is going to be handled by that not-for-profit organization, the option you can do is, because in fact, if you are a very small not-for-profit, a non-profit, you obviously, you won't have the resources or even the manpower to buy or serve and then set it up somewhere. I mean, for one, where are you going to put that server, right? So what you'd have to do is you go for a software as a service offering. So you want to think about it from that perspective, right? And probably think about the obvious benefits and the disadvantages for doing that. I hope this is making sense. I'm going to pause here and ask if there are any specific questions associated with software as a service. Most applications are software as a service offerings. Facebook, software as a service. Although we don't pay money for Facebook, right? We obviously exchange our data. Data has become a currency of sorts. A lot of applications that are provided as software as a service. If you look at Zambia, if we veer off from social protection, think about this. The examples I was giving about UNZA's learning management system, right? Which is called the Moodle, for instance. This Moodle thing here, in as much as it's used by UNZA, but it can be used by the other 122 universities in Zambia. So rather than UNZA installing Moodle on their own servers and having to start scratching their heads about how they are going to be managing this, an entity can come in and say, we are going to install Moodles for whoever is interested, and then we'll manage everything. In fact, if you think about it, this platform we are using works in more or less the same way. Google Classroom. Google Classroom is a cloud as a service provider. It can be used by any university or any lecturer in this case, right, to manage a typical course. Right? Cloud software as a service platform. I don't know if any thoughts or questions about this. I do hope it's making sense, really. What most of you will probably find themselves doing is having to decide or to probably contribute towards a debate that's going to be centered around, well, should we pay money for this application that is provided by, I don't know which entity it is, or should we just install our own application? Okay, or should we buy our own server, or should we just rent the servers and then install our own operating system and install our own software or something? Okay, it appears there are no questions, which is fine. I will suggest that we continue this interaction when we meet next, which is Tuesday. Like I mentioned, in the event that I don't make it on Tuesday, I will communicate these details. But for now, see you on Tuesday. Thank you very much.